The Border Patrol is executive agent for all of CBP. It's a component within CBP, a little bit about CBP. Customs and Border Protection. One of the components, so we're the executive agent for all of CBP. We're the most prolific user within the agency of small unmanned aircraft systems. We have about 500 assets operationalized throughout the United States. We have about 2,000 operators trained, certified. And CBP responsible for border security, but also the regulating and facilitating legitimate trade and travel into the United States at all air, sea, and airports of entry. So our operational domain, if you will, our environments cover the gambit of the continental United States, 13,000 miles of linear land border, double that, coastal maritime environments. We piloted small UAS as an agency, tacitly in 15, but really first couple of assets were procured and testing began in earnest in 17. Obviously GOTS systems in partnership with some of our DoD partners. And we've since grown, so it went from 5 years ago to 500. And we're nearing our full operational capability in terms of inventory size. Finding every day, different use cases, mission sets. We base our full operational capability based on, it's an acquisition plan language, but it's based on the operational requirement as defined by the different field locations. Okay. And that fluctuates. Right? And as the capability fluctuates, it'll translate into a different assortment of what and where needs to be deployed when. The ISR is the bread and butter. Obviously, the Border Patrol being the more prolific user within CBP, we have about 3 drones flying at any minute of any day. Mm-hmm. So, and it doesn't sound like much, but when you think about most of our drones only fly for 30 minutes, we're putting some mileage on them. And that is the ISR mission, the detection, classification, identification of folks coming illegally into the United States or smuggling contraband to the United States. But we also have a significant trade mission, and we see utility in the future, with different type of sensor arrays that maybe become isotope or radiation sniffers. We're utilizing it for national disasters, obviously providing situational awareness as a response agency, mapping. We make better training products with drones. So we've got them at every niche and corner within the agency, and again, they're being developed every day. The time savings and the safety associated with our tower climbers, right. It's become a very significant piece of potential future investments. I see the one-to-many really is requiring more of a system of systems infrastructure, which we currently do not field. For various reasons, but the one-to-one works for us. And I was listening to the conversation, hard act to follow, by the way, the gentleman you had up here just a minute ago. I was listening, and he made a very salient point, and that I would foot stomp. So if I buy a $1 million system that requires a $1 million piece of infrastructure to be able to fly BVLOS, first of all, we're domestic, so we have a completely different set of issues and constraints and guardrails than in military theater of operations.
And a completely different number of zeros on the budgets.
So, yeah, so versus, I get the same coverage, at 1/50th the cost with smalls. It is more manpower intensive, so I need more operators to fly more smalls, obviously. However, I've got people out there anyway in those locations. They're coordinating with the guy or the girl to the right or to their left. There's magic that happens when the team is integrated to that extent, and you're offering up this new capability. We use sUAS not necessarily as a detection capability. I know I mentioned that earlier, but it's more of a response capability. So we've got a detection. We've got a sensor alert from somewhere in our laydown. And we're responding, we're using that as Overwatch. We're using our ISR basically as Overwatch for officer safety reasons. One thing that we learned very quickly, obviously the impetus behind our engagement with the small UAS pilot program was to kind of cover that delta that manned aviation was not able to cover. That it can't be everywhere, there just aren't enough manned aviation assets or pilots. And so in doing that, we also very quickly discovered wow, they're in very specific situations, they're so much more effective because of the covertness, the nature of the drone themselves. I mean, you hear a helicopter coming 5 miles away. If you're trying to get away from the authorities, you're going to begin your plan to escape a lot sooner. But when you're being surveilled and we get to initiate, if you will, that first contact, we sustain that initiative. Not only is it safer for our folks that are potentially walking into a violent confrontation, but if it's 20 folks, now you pick the time and the place of that first contact, and now you've got that group wrapped up versus now I've got to chase down 6 that went east and 5 that went west, and 6, and then what would take 5 hours to locate 20 people trying to abscond from you really only takes that first 10 minutes of initial contact. That's an efficiency that translates into real dollars. Labor costs. Mentioned a little bit ago, integrating into systems, there's a cost burden associated to that right now, given the environments that we operate in. I mean, a lot of the capacity type infrastructure that we would need to facilitate that type of, it's just, there's no commercial interest. Right. So, but and also in the law enforcement, and so we don't want to bite the AI ML elephant in one swallow, right? We need to measure and walk that in responsibly and conscientiously. From my perspective, and that's what I mean by specificity, from the law enforcement mission set, we need to do our due diligence to ensure that we're not incorporating bias into the information that we're collecting, which ultimately could be evidentiary. And we don't want to create complicated case law. So where AI can be used in our operations, I think it's going to be measured as in terms of application. But absolutely, I mean, it is a shiny object in the room, and man, we salivate over the potentials and possibilities, right? The threat that we're seeing and the capability, our adversaries across the border, or the transnational narcotics or smuggling organizations, they're very well funded, and have access to everything that is conceivably sold on the internet. So very conscious of that, and we see that potentially whatever cognition engines that are running to provide better OPSEC or to give our folks so that our network of systems, right, has a sensor array or a capability to establish, oh wait, we're starting to be jammed and it's starting to intensify, or by the way, you've just been spoofed, kind of. Having that type of information, which we can't get right now, post-mishap or post-accident, post-incident, that's very important because we want to build pattern of life of our adversaries. That's the intelligence part that provides us the intelligence of how to operate more effectively and efficiently. Best laid plans of mice and men, as soon as the first round goes down range, it's not really relevant. And that's what do you want to train to? What do you want to culturalize your folks to? And it should be, if you're going to put them in violent situations, obviously you want it to be somewhat simplistic. And then you don't want to overload. It should be, it's not, I know it's not the purpose is to take some of that off of it, but where to go in the future, we definitely look towards greater integration, and so that we can use some of the benefits of autonomy to provide better health and welfare for our fleet, which is a significant increase to or enhancement to airspace safety, not just officer safety. Obviously, we like better sensor capabilities, better payloads, the farther reaching camera. We see, but endurance is the key. I had a guy tell me yesterday, as a matter of fact, we filled 9 different platforms as part of our deployment strategy, and we're rolling one out here this week, first class. And I was asking one of our seasoned pilots what he thought about it. And he's like, I like it because I can turn the camera backwards because my battery's getting ready to die and I need to fly home, I can still work the group. So he's squeezing out every half second he can. For us, it starts at the ground level. I mean, there's constraints about, technology is going to move faster than policy is in the United States CONUS. So that's one major difference between perhaps DOD and DHS. So they're going to take advantage of the time, the expedited time window in that regard. But so we have constraints, we already know from a policy standpoint, from FAA standpoint. So we give that to the field, those constraints, and then let them tell us what they need, and then we go and dialogue. We dialogue with industry, and we've got an entire section of our team dedicated to making contact and keeping the pulse on industry. Where are they going? Military partners, DOJ partners. See, but the very first thing that comes to my mind is reliability. I mean, if we're trying to inculcate this capability, right, as something that's reliable, that's something that we plan to, we train to, that we deploy with a high degree or level of confidence. It's got to be reliable. You know, we've got to be able to pair when it's needed to be paired, and so on and so forth. The safeguard, you know, the fail safes have to work. Those kinds of things. That's not seeing that from a lot of the assets that are available in the marketplace. Some folks are doing it a lot better than others, but that's what we're looking at right now. The capability to the policy is kind of where it can be. We're always looking, you know, to gain an edge there, obviously, but right now we're looking for, you know, good faith partnership with industry that provides customer service, reliability, you know, standardized product across. Maybe they have multiple platforms, but the GUI and those kinds of things. You know. Obviously, Border Patrol's stretched pretty thin. Not just money, but personnel. So that I would say that localized, that would be my first take on it. But you know, the other part of it to go along with the acquisition process, because we have assuming similar rules with the DoD in terms of like cybersecurity standards and vetting, and what does that look like? You know, we've made use of the DoD. Thanks for any of the folks that are here from DIU. The SRR and the blue ones, and then you know the tranche twos, and as we go on, and potentially the greens. And I would like to see some kind of standard, some kind of capability that the federal government provides for all of the stakeholders, so that we can get through that process, and then which would open also potentially the door for you know, different types of systems.
Right.
You know, that kind of like expands the marketplace. I think that's probably going to happen in the future, because the demand will just start to. Manpower is the issue of the day. The manpower is the issue of the day for most all law enforcement organizations throughout the country. If we take a man out of the loop, then we are making progress theoretically, right? It's the common thought, and I would agree with that to some extent. So the integration into a COP or a system of systems and remote deployed aircraft, those are all going to be benefits and advantages in the future. Like I said, I still think we need to walk that in, because we don't know what that means from a law enforcement perspective on all those downstream second and third order effects that will come to place. I mean, again, I hate to create bad case law. I mean, that's not good for the entirety of the community, or it complicates further integration of AI. You know, we don't want to like misstep. You want to kind of instill specific behavior. It's training. It's muscle memory. It's a confidence that I have a high degree of reliability in my kit, that it's going to perform the way I was trained to use it, and it's going to be there when I need it. That's why I go back to something from your previous talk. I think miniaturization, actually, from not just a tactical standpoint, but just I think that's really what we're most interested in, because we could see this being not trained as a specific niche capability within our agency. Maybe it's trained in basic training in the future, you know, at the General Academy. And we're talking about the behavior becomes one and a part of conducting the mission. But the difficulty has been executive buy-in to some extent, you know, and talking about, you know, integrating this new type of capability and that old regimental sense.
Yep.
Going back to the previous conversation. That's not just the fiscal investment that associates, but you know, the changes to potentially doctrine, but also management of our forces and the deployment and the laydown and what that means. So, not from the field level.
Yep.
Nope. Okay. We've got 9 operationalized. We've got probably about a dozen, several test articles in play currently. But modularity, absolutely. And even if there are trade-offs, the utility of that modular concept would pay dividends. we don't really, we give a lot of briefs and to foreign partners that come and we'll sit down and say, hey, how do you organize your drone operations, your drone program? And the very first thing we tell them is, do not buy a drone and try and make it do what you want it to do. Buy a drone that's made to do what it does and use it that way. And that's just because it's been a kind of a lack of modular, but we definitely would love to be able to see that. I don't know that it'll ever be a one-size-fits-all for all of the mission sets and categories, but wherever we can find that efficiency, absolutely, that's, it's just good business.